Hi there, and welcome back to the Leap Diaries. I'm so glad you're here. I started this channel to share my experience of turning 40, and today I wanted to explore a saying we've all heard before, which is all roads lead to Rome. All roads lead to Rome. One thing I've learned this year is that, like most proverbs, the meaning can vary and depending on where you are in life. And when it comes to all roads leading to Rome, one might see it from a religious standpoint, which is that, being represented by Vatican, being in Rome, that all religions eventually lead to God, if you're a Christian. And other might see it under the light of, the fact we all eventually end up at the same destination, which is death. And to me, what struck me if I look back over the last few years, is really started to feel like we're all on this journey and on a road, and which might offer different exits, different detours. And sometimes you might be following this road on autopilot, thinking you're listening to your internal GPS, and at some point that GPS starts to get muted. And you wake up one day feeling a bit confused about your direction, about where you are and the best way forward. And in a way, it does also remind me of the other saying, famous saying that, what matters in life is a journey, not the destination, which to some extent makes a lot of sense when you actually know the destination, right? If you think about it from a goal perspective, you start the year, you have a goal, and you set the intention and you remain open to all different ways to achieve that goal, right? It makes sense, right? And because then you learn certain things along the way. But what this year taught me, and looking back at all the different experiences in my life, is that no one really prepares you for how many detours there could be. And you might ask yourself each one time, am I actually at the detour? Am I off track, or am I on the right direction? And because one day you might feel, you're on a smooth highway, your career makes sense, the job makes sense, you're stable in your marriage or relationship, feel guided, you have a strong group of friends, and the next day or at times you just feels like you took the wrong turn and suddenly you're in a place you don't even recognize anymore. And I've asked myself what could make you end up feeling lost. And I thought about a few things. Of course, there's trauma, right? When you losing a special someone, a family member, which can create certain trigger. There's accident, there's illnesses, of course, but there's also waiting seasons, right? When especially motherhood can do that to you, in both a beautiful, disorienting way, when you start asking yourself, is it even meant for me? Why is it taking so long? And it could also, show up in burnout, losing your job, and sometimes you just feel like you're going around in circles and feeling a bit stuck, and then you look up and think, how far have I drifted from the life I thought I was building? And so to some extent, turning 40 brought a mix of clarity and confusion, because from the outside everything looked fine. I was on the highway, full speed, I was welcoming my second baby, but on the inside I knew that I had to pull over and figure out whether I was still heading in the right direction. And my illness made me, in a way, pull over and stop and pause. But yeah, it's a strange time, because at 40 you have experienced enough to know yourself better than before, or think you know yourself better than before. But you also have growing responsibilities, or at least enough to distract you from that knowing, whether it's a mortgage, whether it's children, issues with your friends, your spouse. And then you start paying attention to what you really like, or what you really enjoy, and what is draining you, and you just keep operating and on default mode and chasing everything with little progress at times, and simply exhausting yourself. And that's when that internal feeling of being lost shows up. That whispers become a bit louder and louder, and you either have to pause and take it as a signal that is not necessarily a crisis, but maybe just a signal that it's time to listen to your inner compass and stop, pause, and reassess and check the map again. Because at the end of the day, I also, what 2025 told me is that taught me is that we all have a form of inner compass. We all know at some point where we're feeling a bit off, and it's not going to be the loud voice, right? It's not going to be the one that is influenced by family or friends' expectation, social media, or comparison, but it's really a small whisper that, or that feeling that something is off, something is wrong. And it's at that point in time that you really have to ask yourself, especially when those off days are persistent, am I still in line with who I'm becoming? How does this feel to me? Am I choosing myself, or am I just following the crowd? Is this draining me, or is it energizing me? And I don't know if you know the book, I don't know if you ever read the book Alchemist, which I highly recommend, by the way, but there's a saying that says, when you want something, all the universe conspires to help you achieve it. And what it shows is that sometimes you may know where you're going, but the journey is rarely a straight one or a straight line. But the good thing is eventually you will reach your destination. And if you approach each of those pauses, each of those detours or delays as signals that teach you something essential, then you will be able to find back the roadmap and find back the way back to yourself. Of course, it's important to know that for some people, the path has been more direct. They seem to have found their purpose really early. If you think about, Facebook, Zuckerberg, some of those, and we see more and more those of the younger guys. And I find it beautiful when you step into that path of yours very early. And I do think somehow it's also helped when you have a very smooth and loving childhood. And that means that you have less fears in a way. And also actually the earlier it is, and somehow the less frightening it is, because you have less responsibility. So you have a little bit more courage to step into that purpose early and listen to that inner compass of yours. And for others, we need to learn those lessons. We need to heal from childhood traumas and rebuild, understand ourselves a bit more deeply before we arrive at our destination. And both paths are valid, and both roads will lead you to Rome. And I think that's what's beautiful about this journey, is that sometimes we may ignore our invisible roadmap, but when we care enough to listen, when we stop rushing, when we stop trying to match somebody else's pace or direction, then we begin to see our own road clearly again. So all roads lead to home, all roads lead to Rome, and finding yourself again will require pausing, learning from the detours you've taken, and releasing certain limiting beliefs that you've been too far to the U-turn, or sometimes certain fears, or releasing the need for perfection, and accepting also that some seasons are a bit slow and others are a bit full speed, and what matters is alignment and knowing that you're in the right direction. So if you're watching this and feeling a bit lost and confused about the next step in your life, your career, your marriage, your identity, I hope this will be a reminder that you're not behind. You're not behind. You're just simply invited to pause and reconnect with your inner compass and find your way back to your path. And you can do that by turning the noise of fear that will convince you to stay small and confines you to what you know. You can do that by turning down the noise of external validation, the noise of comparison that will tell you maybe to take some shortcuts that you don't want, and that will end up have you stuck somewhere. Or sometimes you might be listening closely and invited to take the famous road less traveled, and that makes sense only to you at a time. So I guess the key takeaway here is, if you will know and you will start to feel when things are a bit off, and at that point in time, pause and look around and ask yourself, honestly, is it still my road? Is it my path? Or have I drifted too far off or to somebody else's? And by accepting where you are, recognizing that you might be off track, I think this might be the first step toward change. And this is actually what I want to explore in the next chapter. Once you've accepted where you are, what do you do next? And we'll explore that in the next chapter. So for watching. If this resonated, I hope you stay for the next chapter, and I invite you to maybe leave in the comment if you have felt those instances of your life when things just didn't feel right. Thanks for tuning in.